All right, so again, we're going to talk about MapKit today. So MapKit is the kit, as Apple likes to call them, to allow you to add maps and also get GPS data for your user. There's another framework for getting specifically the GPS location, but you can actually get it through the map. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we do that. I'm going to start out with a single view application for this one. If you notice code, we have a few new items or templates, project templates that we can select in this case, but we'll go through those in another class. My mouse was sticky there for a second. Okay, so for this one, we're just going to call it maps. And again, make sure it's on Swift. If you've previously selected it, it will default to it. But if this is the first time you're launching Xcode, it might say Objective-C. So just double check that because we don't want to use Objective-C anymore. And then the devices will be for iPhone, but I'm going to make it universal just because we can. And we're not going to use any of those for this particular example. I'm going to stick this into our example code project under O2 maps. Okay, great. So this is our application. It looks just like the previous one that we ran through last class, so nothing new here. However, I did want to call out one of the tabs at the top. I don't know if you noticed that these were tabs. We have basic information about our application, like the name, the version that we went through. But we also have this tab up here called Capabilities, and this is where you add all the really cool things that Apple's come out with over the years. So iCloud capabilities, where we can push stuff to the cloud, either for storage or maybe some user preferences. And that's really neat because you don't have to implement your own server. You don't have to get an AWS server and then try to stick a MongoDB up there to capture user preferences. You can just use an iCloud account, and that'll be synced across all of the users' devices. So as long as they use the same Apple ID, they'll have access to those preferences. So in other words, if you're playing a game or you have some kind of progress or just, again, user preferences, you can check the iCloud account and see if that file exists for that application. And if it does, download it. And when you update the preferences or advance in your game or whatever, you then upload back up to the iCloud that file or however you want to do it. You can also store other things on there like photos or what have you. Basically, it's just a nice cloud storage with a nice API set that you can control that a little bit better. So that's iCloud. You can enable that by clicking this on and off as a little switch. Push notifications. So we talked about what that is. This is one way how to turn it. Well, this is one step in how to turn it on. There's a couple other steps. We'll go through that in an additional class. Game Center. So these are the ability to challenge friends. So the game that we released about a month ago has the ability to challenge friends, get high scores, get a leaderboard, and all that's controlled through Game Center and its API. And so again, that's Apple controlled. And so you call up to Apple, hey, this is essentially my user ID. It's like a device ID. And for this user account, here's the score. And then you can control that. So you can have leaderboards right off the bat. They do make third-party leaderboards that are cross-platform. So if you want to release your game, if you're doing in Unity or something, and you want to have it for Android and iOS, there's third-party leaderboards that handle that. I don't know any that are still in existence, but they are out there. The wallet, so this is the ability to add finance data to your application into the wallet that you can use at different places. So I think United has a wallet, and what they do is when you purchase a ticket, it gives a little QR code that they then scan before you get on the plane. You can have that own capability in your own applications. This is new in Xcode 8, I believe. Siri. So now you can implement Siri. And again, we'll go through all these in detail, but I just want to give you an overview. Apple Pay, you're probably familiar with that. If you enter your credit card into your iPhone, you can pay at grocery stores and other places like that. In-app purchases. This is we'll talk about this when we get to finance part of the class. This is how to enable in-app purchases. So for example, if you have kind of a freemium model where you download the application for free, but if you want the premium features of your application, then you buy that, right? And maybe you hit a button, it'll ask you to type in your username and password to confirm. That's all handled again in iOS in the operating system for you. Just turn that on. You set that up in the Apple Developer Portal. Again, we'll get into that later. The one that we're interested in today is Maps, so let me hit this disclosure arrow. And with MapKit, you can create routing apps that users can access from maps. Your apps can provide specific directions beyond what the map app supports, including subway routes, hiking trails, or bike paths. So maybe you're having ideas about, the foothills here in Boise, the green belt, maybe implementing an app for the green belt. You can put all those route information into the Maps application and then have somebody follow it for directions or that sort of thing. Well, you also notice, and I don't know if this is new in Xcode 8, but turning this on will also link the MapKit framework. So let's talk a little bit about that, because when I was playing around with it, around with this to do the lecture, the way that I always used to do it is you go in the General tab, and then at the bottom here, we'd have our linked frameworks and libraries. So if you guys discover a third-party framework that you want to use, like Facebook, if you want to do Facebook login or something like that, you have to add that as a framework. And if you just click this plus button at the bottom here, it'll give you all the frameworks that is built in iOS, or you can go here to add another framework, again, third party, what have you. But if I type in MapKit or MapK, you can see this is the MapKit framework. You would add that, and now it would be added to your list. If you wanted to do core data, for example, again, the embedded database within your application, you'd have to go hit the plus, say core data. If you just typed in core, there's a bunch of core stuff in here. Core data. You'd add that in manually. But that's too hard, right? Clicking those buttons, that's really hard. So Apple came up with a new way, or a better way, I should say, by just clicking that little slider, and now I can add routing, airplane routing, bike, bus, etc. on here by just checking these boxes. But for our purposes for today, this is all we need to do, is just check that box, and that automatically adds the framework to our list here. So I don't know. It's discoverable, which is kind of cool. You can go through these capabilities, and we'll get through these later in class, but it allows you to discover these capabilities and then easily turn them on without having to know what framework you have to add. When I ran through this as practice, I forgot to add the framework. I added the map, and I did a bunch of stuff, code, whatever, and then went to compile it, and I got the strangest exception. And if you read on the stack trace, it said something about maps, but it didn't actually say that the map framework doesn't exist, or I don't know what this is. And I just knew, because I've done this like 100 times, I always forget to include the frameworks for these things. But long story short, hit that checkbox. That's what I wanted to say. Go to our storyboard. Expand this guy out. And I don't know where in this long list it is, so I'm going to go down to this filter and just type in map, and it should come up with my MapKit view. Drag this in. And I'm just going to put it there, and then I'm going to expand this out here, and then here. And then remember, if I compile this now, it'll just be a static square. So holding down the control key, going over to, let's see if it'll let me do that. No, so it will not let me, like for example, if I hold down control, click, drag it to the top, I can do the vertical spacing to the top. But it won't let me do it because it doesn't really have access to the bottom or the sides here. So another way you could do it is over here, we have a layout, a hierarchy of our views. So the map view is contained within this UI view. And so I can just drag it over to the UI view, but it doesn't know whether it's the right or the left or the top or the bottom. And so it's just going to give me the whole list of constraints to select from. So I want to constrain it to the leading edge, so that'll basically make 0 pixels on the left. And then I'm just going to drag from control drag here, trailing. So leading is essentially the left side, trailing is essentially the right side. And then I also want to do the bottom, so that would be vertical spacing to bottom layout guide. And once I do that, that'll constrain the top, bottom, bottom, right, and left sides of my view, so that as it stretches to iPad, as it goes to landscape, as it goes to portrait, it'll always fill up the screen essentially. So that's how we handle that. Now let's compile it. Now we'll switch over to our simulator, because sometimes that doesn't pop up. All right, and there's our map. We can use, if we hold down the Alt or Option key, we get a 2-finger pinch, and then I can hold down the Shift key to move that. So it's, center in here in the Rockies, in this lovely area here. And so we get full capability. If I double tap on it, it'll zoom in. And that's pretty much how you do the map. However, what if we want to do more than that? So just on our map view within Storyboard, if you remember, we have this inspector here, and make sure that this attributes tab, I guess we'll call it, is selected. And make sure, so once you have that, it should look similar to this. Let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see it. And it is kind of small for you guys in the back. But we have the capability of changing whether the map is standard, which you just saw, satellite, which will obviously show a satellite view, and then a hybrid, which will show streets and other landmarks on top of that satellite. So let's switch to that real quick. Next, we have this area over here called Allows. This is just capabilities of the map view. We have zooming turned on, the ability to rotate, also 3D view. So a multi-touch combination will actually tilt that map so that you can look on kind of more of a horizontal. And if you're here in Boise, they have the buildings outside. I think this is for Apple Maps. I might be confusing with the Google Maps, but the buildings are on 3D, and so you can actually see the buildings and how high they are, and it's really cool. So that's a 3D view. The compass. So the compass is, if I switch back to the application, actually does not look like the compass is there. Usually there's a little compass in the right-hand corner here. I'm not sure why that's not on. So scale, which is what I was, the scale is the measurement tool at the bottom. Traffic, so if it's showing roads, whether it's heavy traffic, light traffic, etc. So if you're doing kind of a commuter app, you can have that on or off. And then points of interest, like restaurants and gas stations. If you don't want that on, just turn that off. User location. I'm going to turn that on, and I'll show you what that is in a second. And yeah, there's a couple other things in there. So let's just get to this, and we'll wrap up. So recompile that with just these checkboxes. And of course, these checkboxes can be turned off and on programmatically. Give you access to that. And what am I looking at here? Kind of looks like the United States, but okay, now I got labels. I don't know if that's a bug or I hit something I wasn't supposed to. Okay, I'm not sure what's wrong with the hybrid view, but so yeah, there's that. And again, if you want to hook this up programmatically, it's just like hooking up a button. We go to our assistant view over here in the top right-hand corner, the middle button, and we have our view controller, which is linked to this main object here. If I click enough times, select this one here. Oh, I'm sorry, it's this one. We can see that this entire screen, this entire block here is of class view controller. So that's again what this is showing. And control click from our map view into our class at the top, because we're going to make this a member. And I'm just going to call this map view. It is of type MK map view. And again, the storage is weak because this class here on the right does not own the instance. It didn't create the instance. So again, that relationship is a weak instance. Who does own it? This storyboard owns it. It's responsible for creating it. We'll get into that a little bit more, but just to kind of keep it reiterating what that means. Okay, and then this is where I'll stop, but just to give you guys something to think about over the weekend, you can now access the API for the map view. Okay. Oh, huh, okay. I forgot one thing. So when you're let me actually undo that. When you're typing something in and autocomplete's not working, you've done something wrong. And what I've done, and let me actually remove that, is I forgot to import the MapKit into this class. So that's all we have to do is just do import what module, excuse me. It's just the MapKit. Type that in. Now I have access to those class methods. So map view dot, and you have all the APIs here. And so this is really cool because this is also discoverable of what you can do with the map view. The one I was going to type in is add annotation. That's another name for the pin, right? So you've seen pins for locations. You can do the user location, etc. You drop that in, and you create a pin programmatically and you drop it in the location. We'll get to location next class, but you can add that. You can add a single pin or you can add an array of pins, whatever's easier. And then if you scroll through this, you can see what other things it does. You can insert these overlays. You can add shapes. So if you want to do like Ada County, you can give it a whole bunch of GPS locations and define a map shape or a polygon or a polyline. I believe there is also another data object there. Give it a whole bunch of GPS points that define where Ada County is. Add it to the map. Give it a color. Give it a stroke weight, and you can highlight Ada County on the map. Things like that. Is rotation enabled? These are just booleans that define whether the map has these things enabled. But yeah, scroll through these, and if you want to play with it this weekend, if this pertains to your app idea that you want to do for your final. See if there's any ones in here that are interesting. Yeah, these are all just methods on this object. Another cool thing that you can use this for is if you forget what the method is called. Sometimes I do that. It's like, what does that method call? You want to sit here and scroll through this, you can, or just do a quick Google search. Like, what is that member called, or that method called? You can recenter. So if I type in center, you can, if I maybe filter this down a little bit, you can say center in on the user's location, center in on Boise State University campus, center in on this restaurant, center in on this random GPS point. So you can actually pass that point to the map, and the map will handle all the animation that goes toward it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. We'll dive into adding those map annotations next class, but thanks for coming out. Do some research on all the stuff that came out today, iOS 10, iPhone 7. See what it's capable of, see if that affects your application for your final, your ideas, and I'd love to hear what you guys come up with. Thank you.